Continuing IGN's month-long coverage of Halo Infinite, today they brought us their first campaign hands-on preview from their 4-hour play session that they had with the game. Overall, there's a ton of information in this video and the accompanying article, which just adds a little bit more context and a little bit more details than the video, but overall there's a ton of cool stuff and it has me really excited. So let's just hop right into all the details because, like I said, there's a ton of them. IGN opened their video to say that their biggest surprise from playing the Halo Infinite campaign wasn't the environment or the combat, but rather the characters. IGN pointed out that the Master Chief himself seems tired, and that his movements and responses seem heavier than ever before. IGN talks about their kind of encounters with the weapon, who is the new AI, who is very bubbly and friendly, while the pilot is pretty anxious and weary of everything that's going on. They did say that they didn't see too much, though, of the pilot in their playtime. They did find the personality of these characters, though, to be a relief compared to the lack of personality that some of the characters like Spartan Locke and others had in Halo 5. They feel that Halo Infinite's rewarding exploration and challenging combat could really be a relief to open world games today that are full of chores and repetitive tasks that I'm all sure you're aware of if you've played any open world game in probably the past 5 years. Like I kind of mentioned that their video makes me anxious and excited for the launch of Infinite, IGN said that their 4-hour play session left them even more anxious and excited for the launch of Halo Infinite than they were going in. They show a little bit of one of the boss fights with the Brute Tremonius, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in the video later on when they talk a little bit more about the boss fights in Halo Infinite. IGN reiterates and confirms that Halo Infinite will be focusing on the Banished from Halo Wars 2 as opposed to a brand new enemy, which we kind of already knew. And if you don't know, the Banished are a group made up of former Covenant that chose to abandon the Prophets and instead follow Brute rule. The leaders of the Banished, Atriox and Escharum, eagerly step up to be Master Chief's main adversaries throughout the campaign after handily defeating the UNSC around Zeta Halo. Their goal, though, still on Zeta Halo is unknown, though I'm sure we will figure that out throughout the campaign. After the UNSC's loss, Master Chief's main objective on Zeta Halo becomes freeing the captured forces and thwarting the Banished's plans. Cortana, on the other hand, was presented more as a mystery than a primary antagonist in IGN's play sessions, and what happened to her after Halo 5 and if she is truly destroyed is unknown, though we do know at some point she was on Zeta Halo. They didn't get into it too much because they didn't want to get into spoilers, but they did say some of the moments where the story touches on Chief and Cortana's relationship can be really heart-wrenching. They do say that the Cortana storyline in general, though, definitely takes a backseat to the story of the Banished on hand. Basically, IGN feels that Infinite is aiming to provide a meaningful story to legacy Halo fans after Halo 5's misstep, and hopefully 343 is able to redeem itself. However, they are not optimistic, though, that Halo Infinite is going to be a great starting point for players new to the franchise. From Miranda Sanchez, who was the one providing this insight from IGN, she said that the best moments in the first few hours of the campaign did rely on prior knowledge to truly be impactful. Familiar or not, though, with prior Halo games, the game and world is fun to play and explore. Next up, they had a section going into more details about how the open world works. They talked about how you're going to have more focused encounters in these ship corridors, and then you also have the contrast, which is the outdoor portions of Zeta Halo. They did reiterate, though, that it is not a true open world in the sense of some other open world games, and that gets touched on a little bit later on. The map is broken up into island chunks, which at the start of the game are not connected, but can eventually be connected by bridges, along with Chief eventually able to call in things like wasps once they are unlocked to more freely traverse the map. Though, like I mentioned, the range is limited and focused at first, and then opens up as you get throughout the game. Zeta Halo itself is littered with UNSC camps called forward operating bases that were claimed by the Banished, and you can go and take these back, and if you do, they become travel points and also provide you valor. IGN, though, emphasized that valor isn't just like a currency you spend, it's more of a point-based tracker, kind of on how much of Zeta Halo the UNSC controls. The more points you have, the better equipment and backup that you can call in as you go along. They did say, though, that as far as they could tell, taking these forward operating bases is entirely optional. In terms of an open world game and having side quests and everything like that, they talk about how really the only person that gives the Chief commands seems to be your new AI, the weapon. She's meant to destroy Cortana and is to be destroyed once her operation is complete, and though Cortana is seemingly gone, the weapon is sticking around to help assist the Chief with his task on Zeta Halo. The weapon, similar to Cortana in the past, will call out enemy attacks, notable objectives, and banished facilities that need destroyed, along with pointing out Marines that are in need of help. She did say she was more likely to come across a random patrol than an actual objective, though it didn't feel that she had to go too far out of her way to find something fun to do. There are also special targets that can be hunted down, and if you kill them, you can acquire a special variant of their weapon that is equipable at those forward operating bases. Just like Halo in the past, there are plenty of collectibles to be found, and the new scanner that you can see in the video can help find them a little bit easier, similar to to the scanner that we had in the multiplayer flight. She did point out though that the range is very limited, so you do still have to know where you're looking, though this can make the last step just a tad bit easier than in previous games. You're going to be looking for collectibles like audio logs, skulls, Easter eggs, etc. All sorts of stuff that is going to add more context to your knowledge of the story. There are also secret rooms that they found in mountainsides guarded by some small banished patrols, and here once they were defeated, she was rewarded with a rare and unique weapon like a backdraft cinder shot, which is a slight variation of a hard light launcher. They also emphasize that the grunt and marine dialogue is really good in this game. The grunts are funny and aggressive like you'd want them to be, and the marines are just happy to see the chief and help him out as much as they can. Next up, they kind of went into the tools of the trade, and basically fighting enemies and destroying their stuff is always at the center of Halo Infinite's gameplay. Whether it's taking on a roaming banished force or trying to take out a fortress for a mission, the more open nature of Halo Infinite did provide more combat options for the player. The map does have ammo stations that you can visit to refill your weapons with ammo, and there are new weapons that we haven't seen in the multiplayer yet, and one example here was the Disruptor pistol, which is a small shock pistol that doesn't do much immediate damage but continues to do damage over time. They also talk about how equipment takes on a more powerful role in the campaign, and we saw that in the last campaign video that 343 put out. You're going to have the grapple shot, the shield core, the threat sensor, the thruster, and the drop wall, and all of these equipments can be upgraded with the Spartan cores that you can find on the map, though again, upgrading your equipment is optional. Upgrading your equipment can add things like a shock and a stun to targets hit by the grapple shot, or something as simple as a second charge for the thruster. They did also emphasize that unlike weapons, equipment is permanently part of Chief's kit and can be changed at any time, so it won't be like the multiplayer where you have limited amount of uses and then it's completely gone. They also pointed out that Master Chief does not start the game with all the equipment, and this kind of reminds me of Doom 2016 or Doom Eternal, where you're kind of unlocking the rest of your kit as you play through the game. They did point out though that lacking a piece of equipment does not mean you're blocked off from certain things though, but more equipment does make further encounters more manageable. The next section of the video and article is called A Challenge Fit for a Spartan. Here they talk about how most of the story beats in the game are going to come in these large structures, which IGN said could kind of be referred to as dungeons. Like I said, most of the big story beats are going to happen here, and these are where you're going to get your more classic Halo experience. And the main story campaigns aren't short either. They would say that each major area took anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour to complete and clear out. Here you're going to be fighting all of your classic Halo enemies like grunts, jackals, brutes, and elites, and there's even a new variant of the jackal called the Jackal Skirmisher, which is a new aggressive, agile jackal. The hunters are also back, and with it being a Halo ring, the Flood was alluded to, but never seen during their playthrough. The Prometheans, which are an enemy type that 343 introduced in Halo 4 and 5, weren't present at all during IGN's play session, and honestly they felt that they weren't really missed. The drones from previous games also were another enemy type that they didn't encounter, but they thought maybe the skimmers were going to be sort of the replacement for those. I know personally I didn't care to fight the drones in any of the previous games. I didn't find them very fun, so I wouldn't mind if they were gone. Here they talk about how the boss fights is kind of where it gets real, and they found these very difficult on heroic. And while we didn't get a ton of details necessarily into how these boss fights work, just watching the footage, it looks a little bit to me just like more bullet spongy enemies that kind of dodge and move around a bit more, but hopefully these boss fights are as fun and enjoyable as IGN made them out to be. They also believe that playing through on Legendary is going to take a fair bit longer to accomplish than previous games, though it is important to note that the heroic difficulty in general is no slouch either. Toward the end here they kind of had a section about how Halo Infinite was on the right track. While they only got to experience a fraction of Halo Infinite, and therefore a fraction of the Halo Infinite world, they did point out that it is much smaller than something like an Assassin's Creed world or Red Dead, but Halo Infinite's world seems more curated with excellent combat at its heart, closer to something like Batman Arkham in terms of an open world. And they pretty much close out the video here with an emphasis that they feel that the combat and everything in this feels good, but 343 needs to land the story and the plot if they really want Halo Infinite to be as fantastic as possible. And to that, I totally agree. After Halo 5's story, I think it is really important that 343 hits the story in Halo Infinite out of the park. Overall, like I said, IGN's video and the article accompanying it talked about and had a bunch of cool and interesting Halo Infinite things, and I'm definitely very excited to check it out once it releases. They definitely calmed some of my concerns about the open world, as it does seem we're still going to get those more focused classic Halo experiences that we've come to know and love, while also getting to experience a little bit more exploration maybe than prior Halo games had. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of IGN's coverage of Halo Infinite. Are you more excited, less excited? Did this bring up new questions? Did this answer your questions? Basically anything you want. As always, if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. You can catch me over on Twitch. I stream Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and you can also follow me over on Twitter or Instagram. And with that said, I'll see you all next time.